The law that brought health care to millions of Americans has been struck down by a U.S. judge. The Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare as it's known. It was former President Barack Obama's signature piece of legislation, but a judge has ruled it unconstitutional. Right now, it remains in effect. That means those that want it can still sign up. But that ends in just hours on Saturday evening. If the judge's decision is upheld, millions may end up losing their health care. President Donald Trump, who tried to repeal this legislation earlier in his presidency, tweeted the ruling was not surprising and it was, quote, great news for America. While the top Democrat in the House promises to intervene to uphold what she calls the life-saving protections for people with pre-existing conditions and promises to reject the Republican effort to destroy the Affordable Care Act. Former Assistant U.S. Attorney in Los Angeles, David Katz, joins me for an in-depth look at this. The Affordable Care Act has survived legal challenges before, so what's different this time around?
Well, there were about 70 efforts to repeal it.
Yeah.
It's also been litigated. It's gone up to the United States Supreme Court, and it's been affirmed. But that was the earlier version. So what just happened now is not going to be the last step, but it's a troubling first judicial step. It's troubling for 130 million Americans with pre-existing conditions. It's very disturbing to 12 million people who are on Obamacare as of 2018. And tomorrow is their sign-up day. So it's critical that people realize they need to go tomorrow and sign up because this is not the last word. And many people think the appeals will succeed and that this district court, trial court ruling will be struck down.
So Obamacare has been found, you say Obamacare was affirmed. It was found to be legal by the Supreme Court and lower courts. The individual mandate, because that's what's at issue here, the individual mandate was found to be legal by the Supreme Court. And fining people who did not purchase health care, that's the individual mandate, that was also legal. But once that fine was set at zero by Congress, as it has been in the latest federal tax law, then this whole thing becomes illegal? That's the basis for the judge's thinking, right?
Well, the Republicans tried to get rid of Obamacare, the ACA, a million different ways. And if these zealots were really clever, maybe they did it. Maybe they booby-trapped it in a way that the judge said, you know what, now the whole package is unconstitutional. But that's very dubious, Cyril, whether that's really going to stand up. In other words,
detail the argument for me. I want to make sure I understand it.
The argument goes like this. The Supreme Court ruled 5-4 that the ACA was constitutional, not because the Commerce Clause, there were 5 votes to say it was no good. It was unconstitutional under our Federalist Commerce Clause. But 5 justices were willing to say, including Chief Justice Roberts, that it was okay as a tax. The argument goes that
that's the individual mandate, right? If we consider that the individual mandate is a tax, then that is legal.
Yes, that certainly was the ruling 5-4, that it functioned as a tax, that if you didn't buy the insurance, you had to pay a tax. And that was within the taxing power of the United States federal government.
So what changed for this Texas federal judge?
Well, as of next year, there is no more individual mandate. That was what the Republicans put in the new ACA. And so that's why I say maybe they have booby-trapped it in a way that at least satisfied that trial judge down in Texas. Now, mind you, there's 1,000 trial judges in America. This case was in front of the dream judge, the go-to judge for the zealots who were challenging Obamacare. And the case was heard by a judge who's ruled against Obamacare provisions before. He's a conservative Republican appointed by George W. Bush. And as I say, this particular judge had ruled against the Obamacare, so people don't think it's a total accident that the state attorneys general ended up in front of him. Then the Trump administration refused to defend the legislation, although it's the law of the land. That's why Democratic states, governors, and attorneys general came in, like California's, and defended it. So that's who the appellants are going to be. And, of course, Pelosi said that the Democrats, once they're in power, are also going to ask to intervene in the lawsuit. So it'll be, as appellants, the ones challenging what the Texas trial judge just did. It'll be the House of Representatives, once it's Democratic, and a couple of dozen states like California with their state attorneys general complaining that Californians and other state citizens can't get Obamacare, and this ruling is wrong to throw out Obamacare.
So one important thing I have to say for our viewers, and this comes from the White House statement, this law stands as we speak, right? The quote is this from the statement: "We expect this ruling will be appealed to the Supreme Court. Pending the appeal process, though, the law remains in place." So that's important for everyone to know. We don't have a conclusion right now. The law is still what it is and what it was before this ruling. Look, Donald Trump has appointed 2 conservative justices to the Supreme Court. Does that mean that if this case goes all the way back to the Supreme Court, then it is more likely to be struck down than last time?
Well, it's a little frightening, as I say, in terms of the people who need this care. We don't want to return to the days. The Republicans say we're going to return to the days when people had choice. But the reality was 20 million Americans, poor Americans in particular, people who had pre-existing conditions, the only choice they had was to go to the emergency room and hope that they could get care when they were in extremis.
But as a matter of law, in this new Supreme Court with the new bench?
Well, Scalia voted with the 4. So Gorsuch or Kavanaugh will vote as Scalia did, let's say. The question is, will one of them vote like Kennedy? If one of them votes like Kennedy, there's the 4. Then what will Chief Justice Roberts do? Now, you have to look at the law, including the new law, as a whole. And I don't buy it that it's still not a tax. I believe it's still a tax. It still has punitive aspects if you don't get it when you look at the law as a whole. On top of that, I've always thought they were wrong about the Commerce Clause. And once you look at the case again with the new act, I believe it is within the Commerce Clause. They found other things didn't violate federalism. In America, the idea is that the states have all these rights, and they retained a lot of rights, and the federal government has to be careful not to encroach on the states. But the idea of controlling health care, it's the biggest part of the economy. It's a huge part. The idea that they're reaching into everyone's life regarding some trivial matter, this is the most important matter in many, many people's lives, their health care.
All right, David Katz, former Assistant U.S. Attorney, thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.